We already know what doesn't work. We already know that. We've lived through that. We've survived that. Where do we move ahead for tomorrow, for our children, for our great-grandchildren, for our future generation? It's not by following somebody else's law. It's following what works for us in our community. We have the inherent right to look after our children. So does everybody else in this world have that inherent right. As a parent, the opportunity to give their child the best possible life. Minno bemad ziwind in our language. And within our language, there is rules and there's laws, there's procedures and protocols to every part of life. It was in our language, it was in the way we spoke, and that did us justice. Children weren't left alone. We had traditional adoption, traditional rearing of children from time immemorial. We've looked after our brother's children when our brother couldn't do it anymore.
I embrace and endorse the Honoring Our Children vision. I'm a former long-standing board member at the Southern First Nation Network of Care, overseeing numerous CFS agencies. Every opportunity I had to make an address to the provincial representatives that would come sit at our table, I told them the decisions that you make at the provincial level do not reflect well at the grassroots level where it counts. The vision of honoring our children does just that. The great thing about the grassroots level is we know the people personally. We know the needs, we know the history, and we can make the decisions that would best reflect upon the parent and their children. Who better to implement that and address that than our own peoples? I look forward to working hand in hand with those involved to help implement this into our community for the betterment of our children.
This is something very exciting for our people, to have legislation that is going to be our own. And taking back, the ways of our families, to have our children within our families looking after our own children. I've came through these different phases of child welfare, and I'm really looking forward to this next one, to be a part of making sure our children are brought up to know who they are. It's always been a concern for me to see, the proposed legislation on making sure our children know their rights is having their identity come first, their linguistic backgrounds and their families. So I'm glad that there is going to be a big change for our children. We don't want to lose our kids into other systems. So I'm sure that's going to be a part of that, as well as our communities being taught, how to take care of our children in the ways of our ancestors.
We're all equal in the eyes of the Creator, everyone. And same as our children, those are gifts the Creator had given us to look after. Way back in the 80s, me and my wife, and then I was a police officer, and she worked for ICFS. We worked together quite a bit, going out and working with the children, the people that were going through hard times and everything. To me, it was hard to understand why they were taking away children from them. They should have been helping them work with their things instead of punishing the person. And I think that's where everything started falling apart and going through hard times. And we knew that it wasn't the way, So, long ago it was totally different. As soon as something happened in there, it was the grandmother that went there and said, okay, we'll look after your child till you guys straighten out, then come back and bring them back and see if you're okay. And that's how it worked way back then. So all these things that are taking place today, it's starting to come back to some of the things, because all our beliefs are in there, understanding who you are, where you come from, and where you're going.
It's important that the community works together if they want to honor the children, because they're our future. It's important that everybody gets on board and thinks about it, puts out their ideas about how can we take care of our own children so that we don't see them going off away from the reserve and not learning their culture, because we've lost a lot of children to that already, and it's time that we're doing this. So I'm really excited about it. I hold this up with great excitement. It talks about what this is all about. Some people may not have had experience with child and family, but I have. I've worked with children all my life. I raised my own children, and I worked as a school principal, so I know we can do better. We just haven't been given that chance to come and say this is how we can do things. People were always doing things for us. It's time that we started doing things together. So I'm all for this, and I'm going to give it my all to make sure that this happens.
So when we look at this thing that is what we call legislation, it is the continuation of life, interpreted to our elders through the language that should guide us, that should give us a solid foundation for modern day law to base that conception of what is truly right for us as the Anishinaabe people, for our children into the future.